Hi, I'm Randy Wooden, and welcome to another in our Edge Library series. These are questions you should avoid asking in an interview, and this is part 2. We talked in part 1 a bit about asking questions dealing with money and benefits and the open and closed-ended questions, that sort of thing. Now let's talk about training. I alluded to it in not only in a workshop but also in the other library series. And the word training is something that, particularly once you're past entry-level positions, the word training almost implies that you really don't know what you're doing. So, instead of using the word training, what about transition support? Look, anybody, I don't care what level you are, you could be the CEO of the company. When you walk in there on day one, there are support agenda items, there's support processes that need to be in place to help ensure a smooth transition. That's all I'm driving at. I mean, you walk into the place, you're going to have to learn the paper flow, how the business flow works. Yeah, sure, you understand your job because you've done that sort of work before, but you also may need to be schooled on the specific industry. Maybe you're changing industries. And so to suggest training, especially somebody at my age, I don't want to walk in and say, tell me about the training. Yeah, companies have training, but yet you want to call it transition support. Maybe there are other terms that are also along those lines that are palatable without using the word training. And by the way, not a good idea to ask a company, do you offer training? Or do you offer transition support? That's a closed-ended question. It could be answered yes or no. And let's face it, all companies have some kind of training, even if it's lousy. They have some, and if they don't, they'll sort of make it up and say they do. So anyway, that's a little bit on the transition support. Another question you can ask, but I'd prefer to avoid it simply because you're not going to get the truth, is what is your management style? Think about that for a minute. It's like, when did you last quit beating your wife? How do you... You're not going to get the truth on that. Why bother asking? For most people, they don't like managers that micromanage, smother. They don't like that. Well, if you're across the table from somebody who is, and who knows he is, and who knows he has a reputation as a jerk, you think he's going to come out and tell you that in the interview? No way. He's not going to do that. He'll make something up. I'll tell you what, when he says something, watch where his eyes go. His eyes go down a lot. They kind of go off to the side. They're a little shifty. That might tell you what you need to know. It also may help you when they use words like they, my people, those sort of things. And we've talked about when you get a tour of the facility, watch how other people gravitate. Do they come toward him as the two of you walk through a place, or do they tend to part and kind of drift away? Little clues like that can give you an idea in terms of somebody's management style, or maybe more to the point, how they are respected and viewed among the folks who work for them. So those are a couple of things to avoid. Something else you may want to avoid is the growth potential question. Certainly it's good to ask about longer term opportunities for someone who does a good job in the company, but do not come out, and I've heard this in interviews when I've interviewed at all levels over the years. When I hear a question, and I've heard this, I hear it more often from more, let's say, on the younger side, maybe under 25, and just not that schooled in sort of knowing how to word things. But they'll say, well, what's the next position for me in the company? And it's very presumptuous to say that or to ask that. I just wouldn't go there. I would qualify my question by saying, if I, assuming somebody comes in and does a good job, what would you see as perhaps some of the longer term opportunities for them? But to just come in and say, okay, what's next for me, doesn't sit too well with the employer. At least it wouldn't with me. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't care for that. So those are a few things that you may want to avoid, and there could be other ones too. Just remember, try to ask open-ended questions that don't require a yes or no response. And the way to work into those could be, tell me about. What's been your experience with? How do? Why? Why can be a difficult question. Just remember, a why question is a great question when it benefits. When tell me why or how this came about where you offer this new product. But why questions can be very difficult for the receiver of the question when it's a negative question. I see you filed for bankruptcy. Why did that happen? I mean, that's a tough one. So don't ask it in that way. That's going to wrap it up for this in our Edge Library series with questions you might want to avoid asking the employer. And this is part 2. I'm Randy Wooden. Thanks for watching.